And the first item on this agenda is an exec session. So while we're in exec session, hopefully they can fix the computer issues. All right? So do I have a motion to go into exec session?
Mr. Chair, I move we recess the special meeting of the Board of Supervisors and convene executive session.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. Hopefully I'll have everything fixed when we get back. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for the indulgence of that e-session. And I'm told we have technology working again. So this work session is a presentation and a discussion and an update to the Board of Supervisors about current and future generating capacity. I have Dedrick here as introducing our folks, I believe.
That is correct. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board, Dedrick Denton, Interim Community Development Director. And today we have the pleasure of APS and SRP to give us a presentation on the state of energy within Pinal County. So I'm going to hand it over to SRP to give you guys a presentation first, and then after that we'll wrap it up with APS.
Okay. For the record, if you'll identify yourselves when you come up.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Bill McClellan. I'm the Director of Resource Planning, Acquisition, and Development at SRP. And good morning, Chairman Miller and members of the board. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to share SRP's perspective on energy in Pinal County, both where things stand today and where we see them heading in the future. So I'll start off with a quick snapshot about SRP. We're a not-for-profit water and power company, and we've been serving Arizona for over 120 years. And we're proud to provide essential water and energy services to more than 2 million people across central Arizona, including many right here in Pinal County. As you know, the valley is growing very fast. With that growth is opportunity, but it also puts increasing pressure on the power system. Electricity demand is hitting record levels, and SRP is forecasting growth of 6% annually over the next 10 years for energy. This is compared to less than 2% over the last decade, from 2015 to 2025. And to be able to keep pace with that future demand, SRP will have to make significant investments in infrastructure. So that's going to include new power resources and hundreds of miles of new transmission lines and investments in natural gas infrastructure as well. So today I'll give an overview and share some of the challenges that utility providers like SRP are facing, how it relates to Pinal County, and how a diverse mix of energy sources combined with strong local partnerships is absolutely critical to ensuring we can deliver reliable, affordable power to the communities that we serve. And when we think about reliable power, that's not just about convenience. It's really about safety during extreme heat. So a strong grid prevents blackouts, supports emergency services, and keeps our vulnerable populations safe. So counties like Pinal and really across the entire state of Arizona are facing a real energy challenge right now. Populations are booming. Homes, businesses, and entire industries are moving towards electrification. Summers are getting hotter and they're lasting longer. And on top of that, our infrastructure is aging. And this isn't a problem out in the future or a someday problem. It's really happening right now. So from new housing developments, keeping lights on during extreme heat, planning for long-term sustainability, reliable and affordable energy is a really critical issue right now. I mentioned the growth and how fast it's occurring. People are moving here for good jobs, great weather, but it's not just about the population growth. We're seeing growth across all sectors. So that includes industry, where large companies like LG are building advanced manufacturing. We're seeing development in the mining sector. Technology is transforming energy demand. So electric vehicles, smart homes, the way we are using power is changing very fast. So again, to be able to keep pace, SRP is going to have to more than double our system, if not triple our system, over the next decade. To provide a little bit of context about what that means, the current system that we rely on today to serve customers was built over the last 100 years. So when you think about more than doubling that in the next 10 years, that represents a very significant challenge. But it also represents an opportunity to build a cleaner, more resilient future for everyone. Focusing in a little bit more on Pinal County, SRP provides service to more than 90,000 customers in Pinal County. And we're anticipating about 12% annual growth in Pinal County over the next decade. And what's driving that demand in Pinal County? It's really the similar factors that we're seeing across the state. So it's rapid population growth, expanding small businesses, the hotter summers, and then also the large-scale industrial users as well. So just like the rest of SRP's service territory, and really across the state, Pinal County is going to need smart strategic energy investments to ensure reliable, sustainable power for everyone. And when we think about how we're going to meet those needs and those demands, SRP takes a balanced, diversified approach, and you'll hear us call this the all-of-the-above approach to ensure reliability, affordability, and sustainability. And what this really means is that we're looking at all different types of energy generation to be able to meet those needs. And each of those different types of energy play a different role in the power system. So projects like the Coolidge Expansion Project, which is a natural gas project located here in Pinal County, that's able to provide firm capacity 24/7. That really helps us with reliability, especially during those peak periods. Solar energy is something that SRP is investing in. That provides carbon-free and water-efficient energy, and it's critical for Arizona's future, allowing us to meet our carbon and water reduction goals. It also helps us reduce dependence on fossil fuels and help stabilize energy prices as well. Battery storage, that also helps balance supply and demand, supports renewable energy integration, and strengthens grid stability. And then we're also pursuing a lot of other types of technologies as well. This is for added flexibility and resilience, so that includes nuclear, biomass, pump storage, and then smart grid technologies as well. When we talk about adding resources to our system, sometimes we hear concerns that projects that we're developing in Pinal County or across the state are just being developed to sell energy to California or to other states. SRP, as a utility, we focus on developing energy sources to meet the needs of local customers, not to sell them to California or to any other energy markets. This includes our renewable energy projects, and all of our generation efforts are dedicated to serving local energy demands and enhancing grid reliability. SRP does participate in wholesale markets, and this is when there's excess power available. And as a not-for-profit organization, any revenue that's generated from those sales, we use to reinvest in upgrading our grid and lowering costs for our customers. So as I mentioned earlier, we're more than doubling the system and over the next decade, and we're really working across the entire state to develop those resources. Pinal County is one of those locations that we're looking to develop resources in. And this is really thanks to the strategic position. There's available land, there's strong infrastructure, including transmission lines, natural gas pipelines, and it's close to areas of growth. So it's well positioned for energy development to help SRP meet our needs. And when we think about those energy projects, they're more than just infrastructure upgrades. They really benefit the entire community. So Last year, SRP contributed $35.9 million in taxes to Pinal County. Those tax revenues help fund schools, fire departments, police, and other essential services. SRP also invested more than $260,000 in local community projects, and we work closely with developers to help support local communities as well. Energy development on private land, that helps create jobs. It generates additional tax revenue and can boost the local economy as well. So while we're talking about all the benefits of energy development and infrastructure improvements, SRP also recognizes that there can be impacts to Arizona communities. So during development of these projects, we meet with nearby communities and stakeholders. We host meetings and tours, and critically, we listen to feedback. We support the communities in which we have a presence, including those outside our service territory, communities in which we have infrastructure, and where we may expand in the future. So it's really our goal to learn the unique needs of each community and be responsive, whether that's through tangible support, volunteer opportunities, physical presence, or educating the community. In doing so, we are engaging with communities all over Arizona to build an energy future that works for all of us. So just to conclude, or in conclusion, we recognize that energy projects can impact local communities, and we really appreciate Pinal County's willingness to engage with SRP on these important conversations. Your openness to dialogue ensures we can work together to balance community needs with the realities of a growing energy demand. Energy isn't just a technical issue, it's a community issue. It affects Pinal County's growth, safety, and future. And SRP is committed to partnering with you and all stakeholders to meet this challenge head-on with innovation and collaboration. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Sturdy, go ahead.
I think there's several things that you didn't address, one of them being something that several of us are very important or interested in. Another one being, if you could give us a little bit, is Bartlett Dam going to be raised or not? That will affect us all out here. But the one I think we're all missing the boat on, and we would like to be first in line to do this, and if we need to change our policy or if we need to lobby the state to change their policy or the feds on micronuclear, it's wide open. Other countries are doing it. We're behind the eight ball. We need to get on that. SRP, you should be the leader on that. People are learning to hate solar. We're just fed up with solar. The citizens don't want it. People, if you talk to our constituents, they're not against micronuclear once you explain that it's not the same format as Palo Verde or Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island. This is a completely different thing, and it can be made to run a submarine or an aircraft carrier or a factory. Why are we not looking into that?
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Surdy, SRP is looking into developing nuclear in the future. That's something that we see as a part of our resource portfolio. One of the challenges with nuclear is, first of all, they can be quite expensive to develop nuclear, and the timeline to be able to develop nuclear can be very long. So while that's something that we are investigating, we're evaluating, we see that as more of an early 2040s technology. And right now, we are taking the steps to be able to have the option and the ability to use nuclear in that time frame. You may have seen some press releases. We're actually working with APS and other utilities across Arizona to look at an early site permit. So that's really going out, looking at potential sites for those nuclear projects and to start developing them so you have the option to be able to utilize that in the future. And that does include evaluating the small modular reactors or the advanced nuclear technology.
And Bartlett?
Yeah, the Bartlett project I'm not as familiar with. That is something that we are pursuing, and that will, of course, provide some additional storage space in our reservoirs to be able to serve our customers as well. We can provide some additional information on that project.
And there's another one to the east of Apache Lake, which would not be making just a a dam that you would fill and then lower and then fill and lower, constantly pumping, and that's another project that I've seen on the radar as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mentioned that briefly. That's the pumped storage project that we are pursuing. Today, when we talk about storage, typically that's the lithium-ion battery technology. Usually it's 4 hours in duration. This pump storage project would be 10 hours in duration, which helps us be able to provide more reliability to our system. And as you mentioned, that is a technology that's been around for a long time, and it's really pumping water into an upper reservoir when there's excess electricity available, and then you can discharge that through the generator at times when you need it. So it really acts like a large mechanical battery by pumping the water up to the top and then releasing it back to the bottom.
Thank you.
And that is a project that we're pursuing. That would be right now projected to be online in the early 2030s.
Thank you.
Supervisor Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the different resources that you're looking and exploring, and you're anticipating a 40% growth, did I understand that, in the next 10 years, next decade, just in our county alone?
So 6% annual energy growth over the next
6%.
decade. 6%, yes.
In a decade.
Each year over the next
Each year
decade. Yeah.
over the next
Every
decade,
six-
which is
every year 6% more need.
Yes.
so
yes.
60% in a decade.
Well, exponentially.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it works out like that, but it's very significant growth as the grand takeaway.
We're talking a major.
A lot of growth,
I guess
yes.
that's the point I'm trying to get at, is that
You'd have to add some.
we're looking at, and then you just stated that you're looking at, which I think I'm a big proponent along with Supervisor Surtee, into the nuclear aspect of what I think we've missed the ball on that one years ago. And you're anticipating by 2040.
Yeah, that's when we anticipate that technology will be ready. You could go through the siting and permitting processes, actually have it constructed to be online to serve customers.
So really where you're looking at getting the power in the next decade is in these other resources then, besides nuclear.
Yes.
But the
Focus is going to be on that side.
Mike,
Yeah.
but the technology is there. I mean, other countries have stolen from us for years. Why don't we just steal back from them what they're doing? I mean, China's supposedly doing one of these a week.
No, I understand that, and I see I see your point, but because we're in a different society and we have election cycles that they don't have, for instance, and so we have to deal with different administrations and everything else, and that's what gets us in the problems that we're in. Let's just be real. I'm not suggesting that we get away from that at all. I think it's the most perfect system out there at this point. But my point is that I'm just, as we sit there and we've got all this growth, potential growth that's coming on, one of the biggest problems that we've got in my area, and I think all of us here, is we have a large portion of our population actually leave our county to go to work. And so that's a lot of time being spent away from home just in travel alone, when that affects quality of life, in my opinion. So, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, and then gas power. My understanding is, do we have the capacity on gas lines to be able to upgrade, or because a pipe can only fit so much gas, and so if you're talking about expanding more, and we already have gas houses and stuff like that, sounds to me like we've even got to come up with an expensive to deliver gas at these locations if we're looking at gas power.
So, Mr. Chair, I comment on that. So they're bringing a new pipeline over from Texas. Have you not heard that?
That's what
It's only $1 million, a tenth of a mile,
Yeah.
for 500 miles. Not a problem.
That's what I wanted to get from them.
Yeah, so there will be a pipeline expansion, as mentioned by Supervisor McClure, and that's part of the overall infrastructure expansion that we're looking at. So I mentioned there'll be a significant amount of new transmission that we'll have to add to be able to double the system, as well as to support those new natural gas projects. We'll have to expand that system as well. Part of that is the expansion or the new line that will be coming over from the Permian Basin in Texas.
So then on the anticipation of the pump storage that you're talking about, what's the time frame on that? And then Bartlett Dam, do you have any idea on those?
Yeah, on the pump storage project, we're anticipating and working towards bringing that project online in the 2032-2033 timeline. I do not know on the Bartlett Dam project. That's something that we can certainly follow up on and give you more information on that.
Okay.
But it is a project that we are pursuing.
Okay.
I'll just add in on the Bartlett Dam because our PICWA group is one of the members on working on it, so we can kind of be in the loop and getting some of that water. You have to pay to play type of deal. But we're still in the environmental, and everybody's waiting to see what the Bureau of Reclamations is going to claim as their own. So we don't even know how much we're going to get to divide up. I mean, it's a very complicated thing. It is still moving forward. Of course, the costs keep escalating because the cost of everything just keeps escalating. But I'll make a promise to get you a better answer on Bartlett Dam because it's come up now a couple of times and kind of get you at where we're at that point.
I have a few more, if we can come back.
Okay. I want to just make one statement. You think you think these people don't like solar farms? Wait till you tell them you're going to put a nuclear plant in their backyard. I think that I think that the public will be as just outraged the same as they are with the solar. That's my personal opinion. Because it really doesn't seem to matter what type of technology we come forward with. We're constantly hitting the wall, not in my backyard, the NIMBY thing. So, and I want to work with APS, SRP, anybody that wants to generate power in any way to help locate places that we can put those facilities in. Because you've just explained and demonstrated the need is so high. And we are behind the 8 ball already. So, anyway, go ahead, Supervisor.
A couple more questions and a comment. First off, they're not a nuclear plant in a backyard. That's where we have to learn what they are. They're self-contained units, and you're actually mobile. And so people don't have a problem with it. A couple things, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. My whole district is SRP. I don't have any APS. I'm sorry, all the questions are going to you and not to them. But a couple other... the SunZia line that comes down southern, and a lot of the residents, when they hear that it mostly goes to California, why can we not put a substation down there and bring some of that up here? That would be one question. Another one is, and we've all talked about this, is on buildings, though this is an old building, but we're building new buildings all the time. How about the payback on rooftop solar? And we looked into, can we mandate it on commercial buildings, which mandates, people don't like to hear that, but encourage it, and would that actually give you some relief and some help?
Yeah, so I'll start with the second question on the rooftop solar. And that is something that SRP does encourage. We have programs to assist and help and to streamline the ability for our customers to install rooftop solar, whether that's residential or commercial. It does help. It does provide energy to the system. When we think about it in the context of economics, it is a less economical way to get energy. Typically on a roof, they're what we call a fixed position, so they're not able to produce as much energy over the course of the day. If you utilize large-scale utility solar, those are on a tracking system, so they're actually able to move and kind of move along with the sun during the day. So from a dollars per megawatt hour generated, usually, and I think I can be pretty confident in saying almost all the time, those utility scale systems are more economic than the residential or the commercial solar. That doesn't mean that we don't encourage that in our system. It does help and it does support the growth that we're seeing in our service territory. Going back to I think you mentioned the SunZia project. So I don't know all the details of those projects, but generally the SunZia transmission line is a way for people in the West to access high-quality New Mexico wind projects. When SRP procures a lot of our resources, we go through what we call an all-source request for proposal. And that is one way where we might be able to tap into some of the projects that are coming in through SunZia. So there may be the ability through that process to evaluate and ultimately use some of those projects coming in on SunZia. I believe it does tie into the Pinal Central substation. So there is potentially the ability to go out and get those projects if they are available.
Thanks again.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, one real quick question. We talked about solar, but I noticed in a note from SRP the other day that you had cut back on your RFPs for solar for, I believe, 2025, and you were talking with a couple of places. We get requests all the time for people to come and put in solar projects and say, oh, yeah, we're in talks, we're in talks. In reality, they're not. I mean, that's what I understand. And you have very few that you're actually looking at to procure power from at this time.
Yeah, so I mentioned that all source request for proposal process. We do get a lot of proposals when we go through that process. It is true that we do not take every project that is proposed to us. We go through a very rigorous evaluation process, and we do select the very best projects out of that process for our customers. Due to the competitive nature of that process, we're not able to share a lot of details about the different companies that we're talking to, the projects that we are working through. But of the information that we can share, we are committed to working with Pinal County on ways that we can help you work through those processes as much as we can. So I think we've already been working with you to some extent. Again, we're committed to that. I would encourage you and your teams to reach out to us so that we can help in any way we can, as making sure that we keep that information confidential.
Good. Vince?
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 Bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's Rich.
I'm typing Vince on my computer.
So you had mentioned that on rooftops, Mr. Surdy brought up. The issue that I have solar on my house. I only have a 10K system. When you say you encourage for people to buy it after the fact, what about when these developers are building houses? My bill was half the price. I mean, half as much this month, and it has been, as my neighbor across the street with the same house. His was $750, mine was $341. So to put it on roofs when the house is being built would probably cost a lot less after the fact. And do you encourage developers to actually do that, whether it's a 5 or 10K system? Because if I'm saving 50%, 40%, right around there, why wouldn't other people? And mine's stabilized. Mine doesn't move with the sun. It gets it from sun up to sun down. But to encourage the builders to do this, that's got to help a little. I mean, again, if I'm saving 40, 50%, why wouldn't everybody, rooftops, help in every neighborhood on new developments? I know you encourage people, but I have ED3. You guys, neither one of you is in my backyard, but what I'm getting at is I've encouraged ED3 talking to developers to actually ask to put that on. So I just wanted to bring that up. APS, the same thing, because again, instead of putting them in huge fields all over the place, which we've done over the past years, what about if we start trying to do that? And again, I'm not calling it a mandate. I just want to say that if you encourage the home builders to actually do this, it's got to help the grid a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Supervisor Miller. The transfer station from New Mexico to Arizona to California, what's the time frame on that? You have a time frame?
I will have to follow up on that. I believe most of that is already built. The SunZia line is already in
We're already
service.
getting power from there?
SunZia is already there. The inverter system is in Coolidge. There's another one coming, Rio Sol. That's a whole nother.
That's the one I was thinking.
That's Rio
Okay,
Sol,
all
and
right.
that's AC as
But
opposed to.
SunZia is already here now.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not getting any power from that?
Well, comes, but the electrons go to wherever you flick the switch on. So
Okay, but we have the
turn your switch on a
capability
lot,
of
you
bringing
get your
it.
power.
We have the capability of buying power from that right now.
Yeah, it's interconnected into our system.
Yeah.
If there were a project that
Okay,
were accessible. and a good project, we could use that, yeah.
And then let's go back to, you talked about you work with the county let's talk about these solar farms, for instance. Do you do any kind of development agreement with these companies that are coming in with these large solars, for instance, building in the infrastructure necessary, maybe some roads and things of that nature where we actually need some help and assistance on in our county?
Yeah, so when we work with a developer on a project, typically what that looks like is we have a power purchase agreement with them that outlines the terms of that agreement for us to take that power. Generally, we don't include things like the roads that need to be built or anything like that. Some of the things that we're looking at is we are including a certain amount of community support within that contract, so the developer would commit to a certain amount of support to the community as a part of that power purchase agreement. To exactly what that money goes towards, that's really something that the developer works with the community on.
Okay. And then what about the aesthetics or anything else of that nature? I mean, we've got these projects that have been coming to us left and right for years now, and the aesthetics of them they're not there. And it's a pigsty. I just can't think of a better way of saying it. It ruins the landscape and everything else, especially some of our desert land.
Yeah, I can't speak for the developers, but for anything that SRP develops, our self-build projects, as I mentioned, we're committed to working with the nearby communities, with Pinal County, to work on things just like that.
Okay. And I do have one statement before I'm done.
Well, we're going to let you do it.
Thank you. I was asking permission. I wasn't telling you I was going to do it. You know, my biggest frustration is that I see all this state land that is specifically in our county, and it's a lot of state land, and most of that is leased out at $5 a head, and they can only get so many cattle on that piece of property. And one of the mandates of our state land department is to maximize to the most that they possibly can, because those dollars actually go towards the beneficiaries, which is our schools and our school systems. We hear all the time about lack of dollars in education, all the time. We even have school districts that are constantly looking to increase their budgets, so they have to come for a bond election, and most of us have kids that are in charter schools. They're not in the public schools, they're in charter schools, which is a whole different funding mechanism. That's on a state level completely different. However, there's so many resources available through state land department that when I look at some of this stuff, if their responsibility is to get the highest dollar that they possibly can out of it, when I look at some of these solar farms, gas plants, things of that nature, I've often talked about what you guys did in Gilbert. They're on Ray Road and Val Vista. You've got a gas plant there that was built there I don't know how many years ago, before all that was developed around it. And it's nicely landscaped and everything else. And people still bought there, and they're high-end homes that are right there in that neighborhood, in the town of Gilbert. And if these things were looked at and landscaped properly and everything else, I think that they have a value of meeting our energy needs, providing the dollars necessary to help our education system and program go, and allow the state land department to do what they were mandated to do to get the highest value out of their properties. And so those are things that I look at, and it would help us in our economic development as well. And so that's just a statement that I wanted to make.
Okay. Anything else for SRP? Bill, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Supervisor Miller, members of the board.
I've had a request to recess for 10 minutes. Quick break. I'm sorry, everybody, but I need to do that. We'll be back at 11:15.
Who needs the potty break?
PowerPoint presentation to give you.
Okay, great.
Good morning, Chairman Miller, Supervisors. My name is Daniel Ortega. I'm the Director for the South with APS. I'm a resident here of Pinal. I was here about 6 years ago as a supervisor and a recent promotion to my position. So it's good to be back home again. I'm here to talk to you about APS's service territory and what we're doing with energy in Pinal County. Thank you. We're the largest service utility in Arizona. We cover 34,000 square miles. We have 6,300 employees, and we have 150 employees, APS employees that live in Pinal County. Recently, we had our peak demand of 86,031 megawatts of power. On that same day, Pinal County had about 305 megawatts of power. And I'd just like to point out that's similar in size to what many data centers are, is 300 megawatts, and that's what the entirety of Pinal County used on our peak day. We're a public corporation. We have our service territory similar to SRP, and we, again, price and production products. We have profit restrictions because of the ACC. Okay, there we go. Sorry. And we're also Arizona's largest taxpayer. We put $11.3 billion into the Arizona economy on a yearly basis. And that's through our capital expenses, philanthropic initiatives, that's a tough word, and other various things that we do within the county. There we go. Just an overview of the grid that we have. We have generating plants. We have over 6,000 miles of transmission lines. We have about 35,000 miles of distribution lines, various substations to serve our commercial and residential customers throughout the state of Arizona. Our grid that serves the United States, of course, is divided into 3 territories: the Western Interconnection, the Eastern Interconnection, and Texas is on their own interconnection down to the south of us. I'll get to some more points on this later. From a reliability perspective, there we go. APS serves very well. The duration of outages, average that a customer will experience, we're in the first quartile with comparable utilities throughout the country. The frequency of an outage for a customer is also within the top quartile of the country. And our customer average interruptions, that's how many interruptions a customer receives multiple times or more than once. Again, we're in the top quartile. Very proud of our reliability, not only in the state of Arizona, but especially here in Pinal County. I don't know if many of you know, we had a big lines go down outside of the Lucid plant on Thornton recently. 14 230 kilovolt poles fell down. We were able to reroute the power to bring our customers' electricity back, and within a couple of days, we had those poles back up in the ground. We discussed nuclear a little bit earlier. Palo Verde Generating Station is in Arizona, supplies 70% of Arizona's clean energy, and recycles more than 20 billion gallons of water annually. It spends $130 million in annual spend, and those purchases are from different Arizona businesses. And we're also the largest single taxpayer in Arizona. We use a lot of water within our APS. 71% of our water is treated water, treated effluent. And just an interesting fact I thought, in 2012, we're using about 500 gallons of water per megawatt of power, and that is down in 2025 to about 326 gallons per megawatt of power. So we are getting more efficient with our water usage within the state of Arizona. Here's a quick overview of where our power comes from. I don't know if you have any questions, but we're, again, looking for renewables. We have battery storage, natural gas, and then nuclear plant as well. According to Mr. McClellan earlier, we do have an agreement with SRP, TEP, and APS to run a new gas pipeline, the Trans-Western Pipeline, which will be coming to outside of the Gila Bend area. By 2030, we should have generation from that. We have a balanced energy system. Nuclear power, gas, coal, renewables. We have about 8% of our load comes from purchase power agreements. And then demand-side resources are our cool rewards program that we offer for some of our residential and commercial customers. It took nearly 140 years to reach today's demand, and we expect that to increase by 40% in the next 6 years. It's kind of a graphic picture of what I was talking about, but the data centers, our electrification, our EVs, the demand on our system for more people wanting instantaneous information is putting a big demand on our electrical system. Just for a point of reference, a large Walmart store is about 1 megawatt of energy is what they consume. A data center is looking around 300 to 400 megawatts. Just to put in perspective, that's about 300 to 400 Walmarts. And then this is a photo of our nuclear power plant, Palo Verde, which our share is about 1.1 gigawatts of power. Here's a picture of where we're at today with our resources and what we look like the need's going to be by 2038. The graded area there is what we're still looking to purchase or build for our system to be able to support the growth we're anticipating in Arizona. Recently, we upgraded our generating plant in Sundance. We're trying to use more gas power more efficiently so we can respond quicker to the needs in the community, and within 7 minutes we can get a startup, and that's very fast compared to a coal plant. Available today, again, solar with energy, battery storage. We're working on flexible natural gas. The new pipeline will help us with that. And then advanced nuclear and long-term duration. Again, we're looking at, within 10 years, to start looking at the small nuclear reactors. Our peak day was August 14th. It was 118 degrees that day. Again, I had mentioned earlier, 8.6 gigawatts, and here in Pinal County was a little over 300 megawatts. We're having a lot of meter sets in Pinal County. This is a service territory outside of the metro area for APS. Pinal is ahead of Buckeye and Prescott. I guess I'm proud to serve the two biggest growing areas within APS outside of the metro area, which is Pinal and Buckeye. And this is, you can see the growth we've experienced here in the last few years. Some of the projects we're doing, that's what I wanted to bring to your attention. We have a new 230K line running on the west side of the county. Starts at our Milligan substation just off of I-10 and Milligan Road. Goes to our, what's that substation? It's the Procter & Gamble facility, I'm sorry, which is on the west side, and then over to Pinal Central substation. So we're building our infrastructure on the west side to accommodate the growth. I also want to point out that we have 3 new substations planned for Pinal County, Bianco, Arizola, and TS27. And we're adding existing capacity, more transformers to 3 or 4 current substations. That's Eastgate, Toltec, and Merrill Ranch. And we're also looking for a new facility for the Coolidge area. We're also expanding on the west side. We have a new 69, 230, 500 kV line coming in the Bianco area. This is kind of where the Kohler facility is located. We're currently deciding process to get some new lines to build a 69 redundant line and also add to capacity that we're expecting to grow here in the county. Some of our new resources, we're looking for 8 gigawatts of new power by 2027, and this kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking for it. Counting on wind and solar, but not every day is windy, or nor is every day sunny, so we need to count on natural gas, and also going to look to the future with nuclear power. And then this is the new pipeline, the gas pipeline that we had talked about earlier. It should be in service by fourth quarter of 29 or first quarter of 2030. And you can see in the corner the taxes by county, what it's going to affect. The tax base for Pinal County is $7.5 million. Here's how we meet our peak demand between the resources that we have available. Net sale purchase. We're also part of a Western grid where we purchase power from other utilities. There's times of the year where there's excess capacity on the line, and there's times where we are actually paid to consume some of the power that solar is producing, and we can turn off some of our gas plants to accommodate the lower price of the renewables on the line. Here's our customer demand, kind of how it peaks out in the middle of the day. You can see where solar tends to back off as the peak hits us, 6 o'clock p.m., and that's where you have to find the resources available. Batteries there now, I think we probably need to improve on the battery storage that we have today and make it a more effective renewable for us. And again, we were named one of the most trustworthy companies in America by Newsweek magazine. Chairman Miller, that's all I have for you today, and willing to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions? Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I guess the question The thing that I was more than interested in looking at is, based on what you guys are telling us, and APS, you guys are looking at a 40% increase in demand in the next 6 years.
Yes, sir.
SRP is saying that they're 6% a year.
Yes, sir.
And how much of that is dependent on solar?
Well, it depends. Right now, it's about 8% of our load, but we have the purchase power agreements with other companies, and we have battery storage at the same time with these agreements. Looking to be about 20%, I believe, of the load within the next 6 years.
From solar?
From solar, yes, sir.
And that's companies that are already been approved, or they're looking to be approved?
They're either here today or in the process of being approved, yes, sir. We have current agreements
The
out.
process of being approved. They haven't been approved
Well,
yet.
some have, and we have a queue of companies that are be coming online with the next 3 to 5, or from now to the next 3 to 5 years, and we're still reaching out to other companies with projects that they could bring to our area.
Okay, I guess the biggest question for me is, if we're going to continue the growth just for Pinal County alone, if we're going to continue in the process of where we're trying to bring industry here, we've got multiple homes that are being developed that have already been planned for the future. We've got a lot of these things already taking place. It sounds to me like if all this happens within the next decade, which it possibly could, we need to bring the employment here immediately, I feel. Are you going to be able to meet that demand based on what you're seeing right now?
We believe we are going to meet demand, yes, sir. The new gas plant will,
So
will help us.
we don't need to approve any more solar projects then?
Well, we do continue to need to approve solar projects so they come to you.
I guess that's really my question. Do we need to approve any more?
Yes, we do. Could need to
Okay.
support them. And with battery storage would be
We
even
need to
better.
hear that from you guys in the industry so that the public as a whole hears it.
Okay.
And that's really what I was after with this meeting, was so that we could hear from you guys, what are those demands and how much more of these type of projects need to take place, simply because nuclear, from what I'm hearing, we're at minimum 10 years out.
Correct.
Minimum. And so if we're going to continue the type of growth that we need to be growing at in order to fill the needs and make life, what's the word, more comfortable, or whatever the case may be. Quality of life. Thank you, Supervisor. I knew you could help me out. If we're going to, so you see where this is. Yes. The dilemma that I'm in as we sit there and we get a lot of the public, we get hammered because of all these solar projects and everything else. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think part of the reason why we've had the pushback on some of these solars is because we didn't take care of business and made sure that they were dressed properly to begin with. And so we've got a lot of the public out there coming in and hitting us in the face with all this stuff. But the one thing that they don't stop to realize is that the properties that are already in existence that could be used effectively is state land. We can maximize the amount of dollars that are being generated by state land. And that property was already, years ago, was set aside to be dollars able to be generated for our educational system. It was already designated to be used to help that, whether it's been sold off to developers or be used for some type of generation like this right here, solar or gas-powered, doesn't matter. The bottom line is it's specifically for the economic growth of our state, correct, state land.
We will not say no to new solar. We have agreements out there. We have purchase power agreements on the board now to get more power, but they have to be in the right place too. We need to have the transmissions lines in place that can serve the needs of the community. I think you asked, one of you gentlemen, asked earlier what we can do. We need to expedite the permitting process on these plants, on the transmission lines. My understanding, it takes 5 to 7 years to get permitting approved for new transmission lines. And it could be federal, county, state, different permitting processes are a big time delay. There are environmental studies that also need to be taken place.
Right.
So depending on where this solar field is, how are we going to get it tied up to the grid? And whether it's for APS or SRP, is it in the right place where we can get that solar power on the line efficiently and cost effectively for our customers?
Okay.
So I hate to say it kind of depends in a way, but where are we doing it? And that's where our new transmission lines throughout the county are going to start to help support that new growth, because wherever the generation comes from, we need to be able to get it into our system and then to our customers at the end of the line.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
And if you'd like, I can get for you later on the solar commitments they already have and where they're going to be going, and then what's the future of those solar agreements look like as well.
If you and SRP both could get that for me,
Yes, sir.
For us, that'd be great.
Yes, sir.
Ask a question first.
Go ahead.
So,
Chairman Miller.
You're the
real
chairman. You can do that.
real quick, because this solar, this renewable energy requirement, I think was set in state statute at one point, and I don't recall the percentage, but that's another kind of aspect of this whole thing is the state has put a requirement on the generation being renewable. And of course, the quickest renewable is solar, and that's and from what I can tell, there won't be much wind, not down in this part of the country or in this area. And gas, again, is limited. I've been told that basically all the pipelines, have the call on the quantity of gas that's in them has already been called for. I mean, it's pretty well contracted out for now and the future. So that's the reason for another pipeline to come in. And to your transmission side of things, you can't just go put a solar farm out someplace where it's going to have a 40-mile line built just to get it back onto the grid. I mean, and the same with the gas powered plants. There's an economy at some point. You can't go just build it out somewhere where you got to build a pipeline for many, many miles just to get them the gas. So there's a whole lot that goes into these site locations for all of these plants. And I understand the challenge. And to Supervisors Goodman, the reason I wanted to have this study session is I need the public to understand that we're at a critical mass point on the need for more generated power.
Correct.
And the quickest is going to be solar, like it or not, and the second will be gas. The nuclear is probably a decade and a half away. So anyway, I just kind of need to vent my frustration and I do understand where your situation is, and I hope this gets put in the public, into the paper and the discussion for all of us, that the challenge is to get us to the level of demand that we're going to need in the future.
Correct. And as much as customers don't want the solar field, and they don't want a pole in their yard either or down the street from them. So there's a lot of problems we have in the permitting and making sure we get the easements and right-of-way and agreement from our communities to let either the power lines or the facility in their backyard.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I totally understand that and lived that life way too long, probably. Supervisor McClure?
Yeah, not Vince, anyway.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Yes, no, you touched on some of what I was going to say. I mean, I look at solar as the Band-Aid for the present till you can get to the 10 years from now for nuclear, and looking at gas turbines, talking to some of the people that are wanting to put projects in, there's a 3-4 year supply line issue there. So, and granted, if you started now and you got an off-taker like you guys, then you could start it up now, and by the time you got it actually done, it would be here. But that's one of our big problems. You touched on something, your purchase power, 8%. Now, you touched a bit on it, like where you get your purchase power, you say, because you take the overproduction from some places, from solar. Where are some of the other places that you purchase power?
Well, we have RFPs with different vendors across the country, where it's gas. When it's maybe hotter in Arizona, California has excess capacity. Some of the solar companies that come to you all for approval to put their sites don't have a commitment with APS. They just have capacity on the market that particular day. It's almost a daily requests from companies.
Spot market, yeah,
yes,
okay.
sir.
But it's not like WAPA or somebody like that. No, that's because that's a whole
Third
other
parties.
issue that I have with another company. But
Right, that'd be more third party.
okay, that was fine. And the gas line for that, but yeah, the gas line's full.
Yeah.
Right now, even talking with them the other day, it's a 42-inch line. It may expand to 48 inches
That's right.
because there may be more off-takers coming along down the
They
pipe.
have to open up the market, and then they'll
Right,
see
right.
if there's more.
But anyway, that's it.
And just a point of clarification, I think the solar needs to come with battery storage as well.
Yeah, okay.
The battery storage has to be.
Solar's
go
only
hand in
good
hand.
when the sun's out, yeah, right,
Yeah.
And just,
understand.
if you saw the peak earlier, at
Yes.
6 p.m., that's when the batteries can start to kick in. And we're working with different companies throughout the state to purchase the solar and the battery storage at the same time.
And I understand that that's the buffer for the solar on and off, and then for the quick start turbines. But also that needs to be explained to the public better because there are the concerns of fires and all these things. And so that's obviously going to be a conversation every time one of these comes up.
We have a new operating center within APS. It's a renewable operating center that monitors only our renewable energy that's on the grid today. And it's a pretty cool little place where they can track how much energy they're producing on a minute-by-minute basis. And we're trying to use our resources the best that we can to make sure we're getting the most efficient production to our customers. So.
But the new technology
Yes,
of
sir.
the best
Right.
needs to be put out to the public in a more clear process, I think, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about what those are, what the older best units are compared to the new ones.
Correct.
And the different safety features of the new ones. Whether I'm for or against it, that's something totally different. But that needs to be brought out to the public better.
And we had an issue a few years ago, Macmillan, and we learned from that, how do we work with our first responders to ensure that when they go to a fire that it's as safe as it can be for them. They don't open the doors too much and let the
At all.
oxygen in. Correct. So we're working on that. Sometimes we learn from our mistakes, but we are learning, and we're hoping that technology grows. Someone really smart out there comes up with technology that will provide the power to us cost effectively and efficiently and has a quick startup as well.
Okay, thank you.
Does the state have a mandated percentage that you have to meet by a certain date?
I believe they do, but I think it's up for debate again.
I think they did.
They did, didn't they?
I think
And
it's
they're
either one.
rethinking it.
Yeah.
Correct. They're rethinking it. And unfortunately, I think solar's political to a lot of people, and we need it. I mean, APS needs it. I'm sure SRP will say they need it too. So.
And thank you for making sure that we understand the battery. If we don't have the battery, the solar really doesn't do us that much.
Yes, sir. So, any other questions?
Anything? 30? Anything? Everybody good?
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
And I
you.
will get you
Thank
the
you.
information
Okay.
on what we have coming forward in batteries.
Very good.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Good presentation. Okay, let's see here. Item number 3, the work session on a presentation discussion of a draft rule for civil hearings. Officer Bedrick or Joe? Or who's in charge on this one? Ian? We'll go with Ian today.
All right. Yes, this was a joint project that was worked on by Community Development, my office, as well as the clerk of the Civil Hearing Office. So for the record, Ian Durrani with the Pinal County Attorney's Office, and I will be presenting this item.
Okay.
This is regarding the revisions to the Civil Hearing Office rules, which are currently in effect. So by way of background, these Civil Hearing Office rules, specifically what they involve or what they are intended to address, are issues of civil violations that are heard by the Civil Hearing Office. So certain things go to the Civil Hearing Office. This administrative route includes such things as statutes, county codes, ordinances, or resolutions that specifically authorize the Civil Hearing Office to hear those violations. Most commonly, these occur in the Development Services Code, specifically Title II zoning, Title VI building codes. However, Animal Care and Control Ordinance also refers these cases to the Civil Hearing Office, as well as the Housing Authority Ordinance. However, those hearings are less common. So the Civil Hearing Office rules apply to all of those proceedings, and they were last revised in May of 2023. And that's relatively recent, but the reason for some of these revisions is because there were some timelines that we realized were not great. There were some conflicts with other ordinances, and it wasn't really constructed in a way that could provide for the addition of new ordinances and resolutions to be incorporated without having to revise them. So this is hopefully going to be a longer-term solution, and it should not be back before you at any point in the near future. So some of the reasons for revisions, which I just touched on, there's additional protections and timelines in here that protect the citizens, the property owners. There were some things in there before that were frankly, I don't want to say not fair, but there were some short deadlines that did not need to be short deadlines. And this also provides clearer guidance to both the parties and the hearing officers. So some terms, for example, were undefined. Now this defines those terms, provides better guidance, because the rules are supposed to help, not, become the subject of another discussion about something that could be unclear. I addressed the conflicts between the rules of the Civil Hearing Office and rules provided by other authorities, so those would be your ordinances, your resolutions, things like that. And also to make sure that these rules can continue to stay in place while other ordinances, should they be added in the future, are added. So I identified a list here of the most substantive revisions. There's a total of 27 rules in the Civil Hearing Office rule list. I believe there's 14 sections here that there were what I'll call substantive changes, so not typos, not grammatical things, but things that I think the board should be aware of for purposes of this presentation. These are about half of the rules on the books, and I'll be providing a quick summary of each area. So first, the Rule 1, this is regarding the scope. Now, the board recently passed what's known as the RTO, the Rubbish Trash Ordinance, that operates under the authority of ARS 11-268. That is a self-executing, self-contained ordinance. All the processes and procedures for the implementation and enforcement of that ordinance, as well as any appeal rights, are contained within that ordinance. So this created a bit of a conflict with the previous Civil Hearing Office rules because the implementation of that ordinance did not line up exactly with the rules we had on the books. There was a tension between what the ordinance required, most of which requirements were from statute, and what our existing Civil Hearing Office rules were. So we had our civil hearing officers in a position of which governs, the ordinance or the rules. And this is one of the changes that was made to address that. So that goes to bullet point number 2. It provides a carve-out where if there's a conflict, the conflicting procedures or rules prevail over the Civil Hearing Office rules. It is like a contract where you establish the order of precedence. Because that guidance was not there before, it is there now in this proposed draft. Rule 2, this was an example of an undefined term. Default judgment, it means different things to different people in different courts and different hearings. However, it is used throughout the Civil Hearing Office rules, so it needed to be defined. And it was defined as a decision entered in favor of the county when a respondent fails to respond to a complaint. Rule 3, this ties back into Rule 1, the scope. This allows for the Civil Hearing Office rules to survive without needing to be changed every time we put in a new ordinance or a new resolution. So these apply unless provided otherwise by statute, code, ordinance, etc. Service of complaint. So this was a bit unwieldy in the previous version. It has since been condensed as to the non-ticket complaints section, and this is a timeline issue. The next one, the next bullet point, there's a requirement that the complaint be served at least 30 calendar days before the hearing date. The previous timeline was only 5 days. So this is another effort to provide notice to property owners, to responsible parties, to the respondent that will be appearing in the civil hearing office. We also removed the notice served requirements in order to simplify the requirements and provide a more uniform standard across the board that's not as open to interpretation and associated vagueness with that. The Pinal County Alarm Systems Ordinance, which I did not know about until reviewing these rules, that it is an ordinance. It's based on my information, it has never gone to the civil hearing office before in any way. So this proposed draft has removed that because it simply has not been applicable. So we cleaned that up. Amending the complaint. So this is another deadline. Before, the deadline was at the time of the hearing. That's no longer the case with these draft rules. A complaint may be amended up to 10 calendar days before the hearing, and the code enforcement officer shall file the proposed amendment or the amended complaint, whichever it may be, up to 10 calendar days before that hearing. So there's more of a defined cutoff, so people are not showing up at the civil hearing office and being given at that point in time an amendment that they did not know about, that there are additional violations at issue. And so that way it goes back to the notice of we want the respondents to be fully aware of what the violations are before they get to the hearing and when they're at the hearing, so everyone's on the same page. Rule 8, there was a requirement about a party obtaining a representative or an attorney to represent them. That was not an enforceable requirement. There's no reason why someone needs to obtain an attorney or someone else to represent them 15 days before the hearing. You know, a person has the right to have a representative or an attorney. So all we're asking for is that if they do have such a person, the clerk be notified prior to the hearing. So providing some more flexibility. So we got rid of that timeline. Rule 10, entry of default judgment. Now the respondent has 30 days to request that the default judgment be set aside. This was an issue that popped up a lot with the previous version of the rules because there was not a deadline that was specified. Anytime you don't have a deadline that's specified, there will be multiple deadlines out there. So this is another effort to provide guidance and uniformity across the board. Rule 11, this was another issue that popped up repeatedly. We removed the entry of default judgment section, and it was changed just to default judgments. Essentially, the previous version or the current version has created almost two default judgments, and this way it's just one. So instead of an entry of default and a default, it's just a default. Cleaner across the board because entry of default's not really a thing. So there's another deadline provided about the failure to file timely will result in an automatic denial of the request to set aside the default judgment. Again, there was not a deadline before, so there would be situations where someone would ask to set aside the default judgment, and it was 4 months after the decision had been made. So this is another deadline. Default judgments may now be set aside for good cause, or not for good cause, but for these specific reasons: mistake, neglect, inadvertence, misrepresentation, or to prevent a manifest injustice. Before, it was just good cause, and again, that was undefined. So again, another effort to provide guidance to the hearing officers. Default by the county. If no witnesses, including the respondent, appear, the hearing officer may dismiss the hearing, so giving the hearing officer some autonomy that did not exist before, as well as expanding this to include the respondent, because the previous version did not. Rule 14, we remove the option for the respondent to have one continuance without approval. So it was changed to require that a continuance of the first hearing is acceptable if the parties mutually agree. and then subsequent continuances, if any, are subject to the approval of the hearing officer. That way, if the parties can agree that more time is needed, they don't need authorization from the hearing officer as to that first one to move the ball forward. However, subsequent continuances will involve the authorization, will require the authorization of the hearing officer. This was a big change, Rule 15. So now the county is required to have the evidence that it intends to use at these hearings available for pickup at the Development Services Building at the counter at least 10 days prior to the hearing. This way, no one is showing up at the hearing office and being given the evidence at the time of the hearing and then trying to go through it while the hearing is going on. The previous version only allowed for evidence to be exchanged at the time of the hearing. This is another notice requirement, another similar to due process, just making sure the respondent is fully aware of what is at issue before they get to the office. And the respondents may provide any evidence as well, because they have the absolute right to present evidence in support of their case or their position in any of the following ways, and they're just listed. We provided multiple options. We understand people communicate things through a variety of means, so they have the flexibility to choose if they elect which one works for them. Rule 17, this was also another big change. This addresses those respondents that appear before the civil hearing office that have limited English proficiency, and it requires the clerk of the civil hearing office, who's there for every hearing, to arrange for an interpreter for that respondent. Now, that was not being done before. The clerk, out of the goodness of her heart, was providing interpretation services, but that was essentially outside the scope of her responsibilities, and court interpreters, for example, have to be certified. So it's a different standard. Now, this requires that interpreters be there to assist respondents if needed. We're not trying to have hearings where someone has, limited English proficiency and then, is basically behind the eight ball the whole time to find out what's going on. Also, we removed the testimony of what was called surrebuttal witnesses from the order of witness testimony. That is also a creation of the previous version of the rules, which I've never heard about before. So that's been cleared. It's rebuttal of rebuttal, essentially. Rule 23, the decision of the hearing officer. So this eliminates the automatic right of appeal for any decision rendered by the hearing officer and limits it to decisions given by the hearing officer if the authority that is the subject of the violation contains a right to appeal and contains a written notice of appeal. This way, there's not that automatic trigger for appeals, and there's no question as to what issue is being appealed. You must identify the issue, and you have the absolute right to appeal in these situations, but that issue must be identified so it can be addressed on the appeal. It also removed the exception for the appeals under that alarm systems ordinance because it was no longer applicable. Hearing officers already do have the power to impose daily fines. However, it's not done in practice. It's typically not requested. But because they already do have this power, it is specifically enumerated in this proposed new draft. Rule 26, this is the last one. So this condensed the previous provisions of the earlier version of the rules regarding the official transcript request. So when there's an appeal of the civil hearing office, part of the packet that's sent to the Board of Adjustment is a transcript of the previous proceedings. That's the record. And if the Board of Adjustment deemed it insufficient, meaning they can't make a decision based on that record, then the Board of Adjustment shall send the case back to the hearing office for a new trial, because if there's nothing for the Board of Adjustment to review in terms of the record, there's nothing for them that they'll be able to decide. And then the last section is about allowing the Board of Adjustment to continue a hearing for good cause or in the interests of justice. The parties may continue the hearing once as a matter of right without approval of the Board of Adjustment if there's good cause and both parties agree. Previously, there was not a provision that allowed for a continuance without involvement by the Board of Adjustment. This gives the same track or the same opportunity as before the Civil Hearing Office, where if the parties agree, they can continue the hearing once, but then the Board of Adjustment has the responsibility to manage their calendar, so any additional continuances are subject to their approval. So these were the big changes that were being proposed. Again, like I said, one of the primary goals was to basically allow for these existing rules to be in place and to have an order of precedence with other ordinances and resolutions should they be added in the future. So this way, we don't have an ordinance that's passed and then have to redo the rules. Now we can pass resolutions and ordinances, and there will be an established order of precedence for which procedures govern. So additional guidance as well was a goal for the hearing officers. And finally, putting some more protections in place for respondents when they appear. So that is the presentation. That's a summary of the changes. Again, this was a joint effort between my office, Community Development, and the clerk of the Civil Hearing Office. So are there any questions?
Any questions, Ian, at this time? No, I'm glad, because we have had confusion at times, and so it's great to get some of this stuff straightened out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to shift the sequence up a little bit because of some time constraints with one of our supervisors. Mr. Goodman. Someone move to item 7 right now. So for those following along, discussion, approval, or disapproval of the Board of Supervisors selection process for the candidates for the initial Santan Valley Council to proceed by having each board member review the applications and submit a list of only those candidates they suggest to interview in no particular order of importance. The clerk of the board by September 11th, 2025 at 7 p.m. and directing the clerk to identify a final list of not fewer than 7 and not more than 14 candidates for the interview at the Board of Supervisors on September 15th, 2025. If a clear consensus within the range is not possible, then a subcommittee of Chairman Miller, Supervisor Goodman, shall make a determination among the remaining candidates to arrive at the final list of candidates to proceed to the interview. Should the subcommittee be unable to reach consensus by September 12th, 2025, the interviews will be rescheduled to allow for the subcommittee sufficient time to complete this review and recommendations. Everybody get that? Okay. So is everybody clear with that? I mean, is everybody good with that language and proceeding with this list of potential council members for Santan? Supervisor Surdy?
So we need to get these to Natasha by tomorrow. What format would you like? Just the name or?
Chairman, Supervisor Surdy, just the name is fine. First and last.
Okay.
Chairman Miller?
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, is there a reason why we went to 7 o'clock tomorrow night opposed to close of day, so Miss Natasha doesn't have to be here all day and night waiting for these to come in at 7? That's all.
Yes, Chairman Miller, Supervisor Vitiello, the cutoff date for the actual application deadline is not until 5 p.m. And so to allow for those candidates that would submit those applications right at 5, I had to make sure that I had time to vet those applications as well.
she goes through a screening process before we get them, so that gives her a little window of opportunity.
And she works late.
And she does. Late, all day, every day. All right, so this is an action item. So do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 7 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Now we're on 4. And then I'm going to take 6 before I do 5. Okay. Just put it in a hat, give me a stick, and stir it up. Good morning.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. I am Nina Arredondo, Senior Transportation Planner with Development Services. As part of today's work session, we will hear a presentation on the Pinal County Coordinated Mobility Gap Analysis, which ADOT funded through Central Arizona governments. This study is an important step in assessing how well our current transportation services meet the needs of seniors and people with disabilities who rely on transit services. It also highlights where gaps exist and identifies strategies for improving access and coordination across the county. I'm excited to introduce to you Daksha Masurkar. She's the project manager and transportation planner from AECOM, the consulting firm leading this study. Daksha brings extensive experience in public transportation planning, microtransit assessments, and stakeholder engagement. She has worked closely with the Central Arizona governments, county staff, regional planners, and community stakeholders to develop the findings and recommendations you will hear today. With that, I will turn it over to Daksha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. Nina already introduced me. I'm Daksha. I am the consultant project manager from AECOM, and I'm a transportation planner by profession. I am here today to talk about Pinal County Coordinated Mobility Gap Analysis, and our firm was involved in all the technical analysis and the recommendations from the studies. So the main purpose of this study was to understand the transportation needs of the elderly population as well as the population with any disabilities. And the idea here was to identify the gaps within Pinal County, and these gaps just did not focus on the service gaps, but also focused on the gaps in information as well as any financial gaps to run the services and make it more efficient. We developed strategies based on these identified gaps, and we focused on more sub-regional level because we cannot have common strategies for all of the county, but we understood that every town, city, and sub-regions had different needs. Why are we doing this study, or why did we complete all the analysis, is because there is a need for on-demand transit services. When I say on-demand, that means someone with disability or a senior member who cannot drive will call a particular provider and say, I need a transportation service tomorrow or today to go to pick up my medical prescription or to go to take my grocery or to go to Social Security office. And that's what I mean by on-demand. And that need has been rising, especially with the rising percentage of senior population within Pinal County. And as I mentioned, these trips are for medical appointments, grocery stores, prescription pickup, and shopping. So here I've just listed the scope of work in general for this study. As you can see, we started with all the evaluation of existing conditions, and then within that gaps, we looked at service gaps, financial gaps, and information gaps. Right now, we have developed a final report which summarizes our findings and strategies through all these detailed technical tasks. Something that I would like to highlight that when we started with this study, we did a Title VI analysis, that is understanding the limited English proficiency population, where they are located, what are their needs as we start with the study, so that any outreach activities that we conduct, we reach out to them as well. And we identified that there is a need for Spanish translation for all the surveys and the flyers, and that was considered when we conducted this outreach. So here it just shows the timeline. We started this study last year in January, and we are wrapping up this study by the end of September. As you see, we, other than the project management team, we also had technical working group. The project management team consisted of Central Arizona of Government representatives, Pinal County representative, Maricopa Association of Governments representative, as well as Sun Corridor MPO representatives. And the idea here was to get their local knowledge and their technical guidance to conduct the study. For the technical working group members, we reached out to several members, and on the next slide, I'll show who all were involved in a technical working group. We met all these members during different milestones of this study and informed them where the study is going, what are the outcomes, and understand if they agreed with our technical approach as well as the recommendations. So we had regional agencies, we had the cities and towns, we had Indian communities, as well as the current 5310 providers. When I say 5310 providers, these are basically transportation providers that provide these on-demand services, but they get funding from Section 5310, which is FTA funding, especially towards transportation services for senior population and people with disabilities. Okay, perfect. Did I miss something? Okay. Thank you. So as you see, for the existing conditions, our goal was to focus on that particular 5310 transportation providers, but we understand that we also have to look at existing transit services within Pinal County, see where those bus routes exist and how they can connect better with any of the facilities that this particular demographic population needs. And so we distributed a data request form to all the transit providers as well as the 5310 transportation providers to understand their needs and concerns and accordingly shape our recommendations. Okay. So some of the findings that we had based on these data requests that we sent out, that service was limited in the eastern and northern communities of Pinal County. Right now, wherever the service exists, it's only exists during weekdays and is usually, it ends by 4 p.m. Service is generally not available on the weekends. Ridership, Horizon Health and Wellness reported the highest ridership, but there are several other providers within the county. And some of the major destinations within the county where the senior population would like to go is Casa Grande, Maricopa, Coolidge, as well as many of the super Walmarts that they have in the community. As I mentioned, funding is through the 5310 program, but of course there is also local match. There is private funding as well as other funding sources like the Arizona Cost Containment System funding, as well as funding from the Arizona Department of Economic Security. Some of the challenges that the providers said that funding is limited for operations as well as vehicle purchases. There is limited staff, and they have other issues with maintenance of the vehicles. So as part of this study, we did conduct community outreach, which consisted of public survey as well as stakeholder interviews. Public survey, that's the flyer there, and you can see that the survey was online in English as well as Spanish. But we identified that as we are catering to this particular population group, some of them might not be very well acquainted with technology or comfortable with that, and we made sure that we have print copies of the survey and distribute that to different locations within the county. The mobility manager from Central Arizona of Convenes, Zena Gagnon, supported us with this effort, where on the next slide it shows where all were distributed. Okay. So as you can see, we distributed paper surveys at seniors and community centers. We provided them to the existing transportation providers so that they can distribute it to their existing riders. And other strategic locations within Pinal County, whether it is public library, HOA, town halls, you said, and we got several feedback through these paper copies of the survey. So our main goal here was to target survey respondents who are in that senior population age group. And as you can see, from the people who responded to our survey, 60% of them were about the age of 65. And 40+% self-reported as having some kind of disability. So our target group was correct, and we could reach out to them in an efficient manner. So some of the highlights of the findings from the survey was their main primary travel needs was medical and pharmacy, grocery, or recreation and shopping. Of course, there were other needs as well, but with the percentage of respondents with 65 plus years of age, that were their main travel purposes. And some of the transportation challenges that we heard were people saying that there is no demand response service in their community, or the demand response service does not go where they want to go. For example, someone living in Casa Grande, if they wanted to go to Saddlebrook or vice versa, they did not. They had very limited services to do that quickly. And other response was that the service does not operate when I need to go. That is the timing, not having that service in the evening or during the weekends. Other than that, we also conducted several stakeholder interviews. We did reach out to different representation. The Gila Pinal County Transportation Coordination Committee, there are several members of this transportation providers that participate in this committee. And so we reached out to different members, also district supervisors, city and town leadership, as well as the other transportation providers, to understand what their concerns and needs are based on one-on-one conversations with them. And here is a summary of some of the findings. Some of the key challenges is that the service area is too big, and with limited vehicles, one or two, they cannot provide those quick trips that the people need. There were issues with navigating through insurance, especially when federal funds are involved. You have to follow the insurance requirements, and not all providers have a good understanding of that. Limited operational funds as well as the rising cost, maintenance issues, and some staffing issues. And this is something that we also heard from our data requests that we sent out to all the operators. Some of the key needs they said that their riders are requesting is door-to-door service, especially to those medical facilities. Connection to major metro areas, again, for more better medical treatment, or just some specific specialty facilities within Phoenix and Tucson. And then transportation services to grocery stores. They identified that coordinating with neighboring jurisdiction is really important, that the cities within central Pinal County or on the east of the Pinal County should coordinate with each other and make the services more efficient. And lastly, we heard that some of the residents were just not aware that a transportation service exists. And so informing your residents became really important as well. And so we did find out some solutions to do that and disseminate information in a more efficient manner. So this gives you a quick snapshot of the darker purple areas that you see within Pinal County. Those are the areas which have a very higher percentage of population with disability and senior population. If you compare the Pinal County elderly population and people with disability, you have a higher percentage compared to the overall state of Arizona. And that's the percentage that I'm talking about. So when we looked at gaps, we also looked at where are the existing services. So the darker green area shows that the transportation services in those areas are much better than the lighter green areas. And so to actually understand where those spatial gaps are, we overlapped the existing services with the density map that I showed. And so the darker purple and the shaded or areas in the hatch, they show that those areas have more population but lesser services. And if you could see, most of those towns and cities and unincorporated areas that have shown there are in the northern and the eastern part of Pinal County. So as mentioned, there were some gaps in information and how much people are aware about this transportation services and how they can benefit from this transportation services that already exist. And so we did an information gap analysis, and as part of that, sorry, I'm having issues going to the next slide. Okay. So as part of that, we identified that it's important that the local elected officials are aware of these services and understand what are the needs for these services. Plus, we should equip the current providers with tools that will help them with informing their riders of what this service consists of, how they can be eligible for the new riders, and lastly, help the private providers apply for this 5310 funding. How can they apply that? Though that FTA guidance is like a big booklet, and we summarized it into a 5-page checklist so that our mobility manager here can quickly help them apply for those funds in an easy way. So on the right, that is just an example of the flyer that we had developed. And this is something that we developed for each and every transportation provider right now so that they can just distribute this to senior centers or HOAs and also have it handy for their riders or any new riders coming to inquire about their service. This is an easy flyer which they can quickly change if any of their service changes in the future. And this is the checklist that I was talking about. This is just one page from that checklist, but it helps existing applicants to reapply and any new applicants to apply as well. And so there is a set of requirements to get that FTA 5310 funding. So sub-region recommendations, as I mentioned, Pinal County, it's huge and every area has different needs. And these sub-regions that we developed was only and only to dive deeper into what those needs were. This does not separate any service. This does not separate any administration that's happening right now. But this was just to dive deeper into each of the areas. As you can see, the eastern area has that high propensity score with higher percentage of seniors and people with disability. And it goes lower as you go to the west. So but there were some common recommendations that apply to all of these sub-regions, and some of these shared recommendations were. So what were these recommendations and why were these recommendations developed? This was developed to make the existing transportation services, the on-demand services, more efficient and for cities and towns to understand what are the ideas out there to provide such kind of service to their residents. So there can be recommendations or services like the taxi cab shared ride voucher program or the reimbursement program. Such a service already exists in Apache Junction, which is administered by their Parks and Recreation Department, and it's been very useful for their residents. Then there can be the volunteer driver program, which already exists, called as Give a Lift. And this can be expanded further by providing better incentives to those volunteer drivers. As your vehicles are coming to the end of their life, if new vehicles are purchased, it will be helpful if the providers purchase ADA-compliant vehicles so that wheelchairs can go into those vehicles. Provide additional resources to help providers apply for funding. That is something that we already developed. So that was one of the recommendations, and we also developed a solution for that. Then, as I mentioned, when we did the limited English proficiency analysis, we identified that there were some Spanish-speaking residents. And so when these residents are trying to book their appointments, it's helpful if their trip is also, if they have a language line, if they need Spanish translations. Other than that, I would go to the last bullet point. For all the residents of Pinal County, it would be helpful to have this one website where they can go and see how I can travel within Pinal County if I'm not using my personal vehicle or if I'm not able to use my personal vehicle. And all the resources can be on one website, telling them about bus routes or telling them about this on-demand transportation providers. Such a website already exists, easyrideinfo.com, but it needs to be updated periodically, and our mobility manager, Zina Gagnon, will be working on that in a short-term basis to update that website. All right. So as I mentioned, we dived into smaller areas, that is the sub-regions, and for each sub-region, we have identified where does that Walmart exist, where people want to go, where are the senior centers, where are some of the hospital and medical centers. For the hospital and medical centers, we just noted the ones that were a bigger establishment, but there are many other smaller health facilities around in the sub-region. And I would like to highlight that some of the northern communities, which aligned with the MAG planning area as well, many of them are conducting mobility studies. For example, there is a mobility study with MAG going on for the Superstition Vistas area, Queen Creek, as well as they're initiating a study for City of Maricopa. And they will identify all the specific transit as well as transportation recommendations for that. The idea here is to identify transfer centers so that people can get to those transfer centers and use the Valley Metro regional network to go into the Phoenix metro area. Other than that, we also recommend improving some of the timings of the services going beyond that 4 p.m. and providing some weekend service as well. Partnership with private companies, especially some kind of software to bring all the services together and helping with optimization of the services can also save costs. So I won't go into each and every recommendation, but we have such recommendations for each sub-region. For the southern sub-region, where it borders with the Pima County, coordination is needed with Suntran, Tucson, as well as PAG to understand those cross-county trip demand. Then there were some recommendations for the east region, where on-the-go express service is really helpful for the residents there. And then for the west sub-region as well, again, some of the planning studies that are being conducted with MAG, as well as coordination of fixed route buses with the 5310 providers. and then the central subregion. This is the most dense area within Pinal County, and here there is a lot of scope for further expansion. For example, we mentioned here expansion of the microtransit service like CG Link, then evaluate the expansion of Cotton Express and a new service in Eloy, as well as support the Gavel Lift expansion beyond Florence. So getting into the financial gaps, here we looked at existing funding sources as well as what are some of the potential new funding sources. And the existing funding sources, which is the 5310 funding, that is more focused on capital, that is purchasing vehicles, and less focused on operations. So the operations budget and costs falls all on the provider as well as any private funding. Through the 5310 funding, we also get the mobility management funds, but these cannot be used for operations or purchasing vehicles. And there is no way of increasing these funds. This is limited funds. I mentioned there are other funding sources right now, that is the Department of Economic Security and the Cost Containment Program, but also the Arizona tax credits. This is somewhere your provider can be qualified as a charitable organization, and once they are qualified as that, then they can get Arizona tax credits. Right now, Yavapai Regional Transit uses this mechanism to get those tax credits. So as mentioned, these are some of the new funding opportunities that we have listed, and we have identified where they can be used for planning, operating, or capital. What is the timeline, whether they are annually available or they are available every 2 years, and who is eligible to apply for these funds. And for all the different recommendations that you saw at the sub-regional level, we have identified how this funding sources aligns with different recommendations. So for example, if you want microtransit, where all can you get those funds from? So all the X mark shows that those funding sources are eligible for microtransit operations. And we have identified that for other aspects, suggestions as well. So here I won't dive deeper, but we have identified short-term, mid-term, and long-term. There is no time frame associated with it because each and every city, town, jurisdiction is at a different stage of this transportation services. As you saw, transportation services is much better in the central Pinal County, and it reduces as you go out. And so short-term is more about coordinating and planning and getting implemented through the mobility management budgets. That is dissemination of information, helping your new applicants and existing applicants with the 5310 funds, as well as through the Section 5305 transit funding, transit planning funds. You can apply to ADOT and get some funds to conduct a planning study. Then the midterm is pursuing additional funding through those additional sources that I just listed, and then expanding your existing service. And then long term is starting new services. So here are some of the steps, and this aligns with our short, mid, and long-term prioritization of how you can close that funding gaps. It is a step-by-step process in general, but first you have to start with awareness that such services exist, why these services are important, and how can people with disability and senior population, as well as other residents, can benefit from these services. Then start having those discussions with your regional partners, COG, MPO, ADOT, understand what funding sources are available, how can they help you administer a study. Third is initiate a study. Once you know what your jurisdiction wants, then initiate a study to do all the technical analysis and get those refined recommendations, something that are more tangible and can be implemented, and a funding source can be identified for those. Then once you have accomplished those recommendations, you want to implement that. And for implementation, it is important to define leadership, roles, and who are responsible for those pilot programs. And lastly, actively participate in the Pinal RTA discussion regarding the region-wide transportation tax, and CAG to advocate for some of the revenues to be used for new transportation services as well as improving existing transportation services. And with that, I will stop, and I welcome any questions that you have on this study. Thank you.
Any questions, anybody?
Just comment, maybe.
Okay, sure.
Looking on the east side, that's much of my region, but also Supervisor Surtees, and the on-the-go program is nice, but as you say, it stops at 4 o'clock, and you say, taxi services, non-existent. And, I mean, even like Uber or Lyft, they're not there, and I have a good story about that for future, but about some poor people from out of town. But also volunteer driver programs are going to be non-existent.
Okay.
When you look at non-medical transport, it's almost impossible to get insurance for that anymore. There have been too many accidents, too many things. My wife is on an insurance pool. She's president of one, and they've backed out of that because they can't afford to insure those companies. And many of those companies cannot get insurance. I don't know how they're going to survive. But there's a lot of need for the non-medical transport for shopping on the east side. Another consideration, of course, is medical transport for dialysis. They have issues there. They can get down, but they don't run enough buses to get people to dialysis. There used to be one in, I want to say Mammoth, and they shut down for business reasons, and so they had to go down to Oro Valley. But they couldn't get there, and the time constraints for that, the time that it takes to do dialysis, it's very difficult. So there's a lot of considerations for transport on that side of the county. I don't have any solutions, I'm just saying, but those are some of the things that occur.
Yeah. And the time constraints, and I saw this presentation yesterday. Okay. So, because in our area, actually, there's a need for swing shift people that could use that ride in the manufacturing time of day. They go to work at 3. Well, they can get them there, but there's no way to pick them up to bring them home at 11 type of thing. So, and I didn't even think about your side of this, the county and the time constraints for some of those medical issues. I don't know if there's a way to expand that range of time, because I think that in these rural areas, and the distance to get to a lot of these programs is challenging at best. So, like Supervisor McClure, I don't have a solution, but I certainly can identify a problem. But if we can just keep working on it, I think that's a good idea.
Right. Thank you for your comments, Supervisor McClure and Supervisor Miller. Yes, these needs we did identify, but with any kind of solution comes funding. And that's why we focused on identifying those different funding resources. We also understood that many of these health facilities have their own transportation services, and especially like the smaller ones, they are not able to keep up with the costs, like the dialysis center, but there are these bigger hospitals like Banner or any of the others who can provide these transportation services. And this is something, this is my experience with working with Valley Metro in the Phoenix area, where they have a separate program called a Right Choice program, and which is anyone can use it, and of course there is a local match, but these are subsidized trips, and where a city is not responsible, but you can have a private partner come and provide these trips, and they have their software packages which makes this service more efficient. They have their algorithm which optimizes the trips, make sure that it is shared, right? And it also helps some of the riders schedule their trips better. And so these were some of the solutions that we were looking into. And we did meet one of such private companies to understand what all we need to do if we want to implement this in the future. What are the costs associated with it? And Nina from the county was present for that meeting as as well. So this was done just to give everyone a heads up of what are those costs associated with that, but what are also the benefits if you partner with a private company for such services, because many of the transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, sometimes the market is not viable for them and they are not in the area. And that's why it becomes important to bring someone who has drivers around here living in the area. And these companies, through the Valley Metro Right Choice program, they serve Chandler, Gilbert, all these areas. So they are very closer to Pinal County areas than some of them that serve in Phoenix area. So I have informed all the regional representatives of these potential solutions, and our technical working paper has more detailed solutions. I just give you an overview here.
Yeah. No,
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Well, many of those things work great in the municipal areas, but when
Yeah.
you get out further,
Yeah.
it's very, very difficult
As
to
soon
get
as the
services.
population thins out, it gets more challenging. Supervisor, sorry, did you have any?
It just Yeah, we're just such a spread out county with such spread out communities. It's so difficult. I mean, there's a lot of people been working on this, and
Yeah.
there's just never any easy answers.
Absolutely. So, okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Have a good day. Okay. Now, per the instructions on here, I'm going to take item number 6 first, and then we're going to go back to 5.
All right.
Okay?
Good
It looks like you're amenable
afternoon,
to
Chairman
that.
Miller, Supervisors. Sean Babu, I serve as the presiding justice of the peace here in Pinal County. I was here 3 months ago talking about cost recovery, and we never came back with that ordinance and the changes with that, and decided to kind of revamp some things, which I'm bringing here today. This proposal or ordinance, if you pass it, it creates a separate security fee for the justice courts, and it'll help pay for court security. We currently are helping to fund, I think it goes back to the general fund, but for 6 security officers at the amount of $432,000 for this past fiscal year. It could also be used to purchase security equipment. Each of our courts have a walk-through scanner, x-ray machine. Those are pretty hefty items. Rather than come to the board and ask for general fund monies to help purchase those, this would be a separate fund, special revenue that would be able to pay for those things. Now, this assessment, just like the current cost recovery, would be assessed on individuals who are found or plead guilty to criminal traffic offenses or responsible for civil traffic violations. So it'll be on each charge that they do that with. So if it's 2 speeding and no insurance, right, they're going to get hit twice with this security fee.
How large, I'm sorry, Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
How big is your fee? What are you proposing?
So we're going to get to that.
Okay. Am I jumping ahead?
Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, because we jumped from 5 to 6, so apparently I sped ahead too. You know.
You're just going with the flow, huh?
I'm having a hard time with the. Yeah, if you do that now, thank you. So we talked about before in terms of the general fund monies versus what kind of revenues come back into the general fund from our justice courts, and this type of fund will relieve some of the burden on the taxpayers. Last fiscal year, the difference between what the county spent out of general fund monies to operate our courts and for personnel, there was a difference of $1,879,000 versus what came back to the general fund from fines and fees from each of the justice courts. Now, the current cost recovery, which is the $20, last fiscal year it generated $306,000 from all 6 courts. So out of that, $431,000 went to court security. Obviously, so that amount, which there was a reserve, right, continued to decrease, which is why we were coming to the board to kind of propose that change last time. Now, $300,000 for the $20, right? You're going to multiply that times 3, so that it would bring in an amount of $900,000 projected when this is implemented for a full fiscal year. This next slide kind of shows what the actuals were for what we spent out of the general fund, and the actuals for revenues that came back into the general fund from each of our courts, and then obviously the difference with that.
So you need more customers? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't.
You don't.
So legal authority, we went over this last time. Obviously, statute gives you the authority to assess these fees and trying to relieve the burden on taxpayers. How this works, just the same as the current cost recovery. The fees collected is deposited into the Justice Court Recovery Fund. Now that's managed currently and would still be managed by the Pinal County Finance Department. It'd be used for all those things for court security, anything from the personnel, not to pay for them directly, but to go back into the general fund to the costs associated with those 6. Any security equipment. The process to spend that money will be an application to the presiding judge of the Superior Court would have to sign off on that, and then it would go to the county manager for his sign off on that before any funds would be expended out of that account. Here you see the proposal from our justice courts would be to have that at a $60 fee that would be assessed on each of those offenses where they pled guilty, responsible, or found guilty or responsible of. It would generate that $900,000 as I indicated, and again, you've probably heard from different folks, hey, I need this change to the building, right, for security reasons. I need to fix this over here. Security cameras, some that have a large dollar amount attached to them. Eventually, these things can be used to help supplement that and relieve the burden again.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. So, Judge Bebu, the $60 fee, so, I mean, you get this on the people that can afford to pay it. The people that can't afford to pay these fees, and it just goes on, there's a lot of those folks out there. And so how do you recover
Absolutely.
that? How do you recover that fee from the folks that can't afford the fee?
Let me expand on that question, because that was really my question as well. They say, I'll make payments, you know. So is it the total fine, and then the $60 is a percentage every time they make a payment, that percentage comes out to go to the cost recovery, or do you get to skim that right off the top at first? I mean, I'm just curious about.
Very, very good question.
You know,
Chairman
because
Miller.
And my real question is, how much is on the books? How much has not
That's
been
a great
collected?
question.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman Miller, Supervisor McClure. There is a pecking order in terms of from base fines to state surcharges to this cost recovery to a time payment fee to restitution, right? So time payment fee, it's $20. Somebody's on a payment plan. That's the first thing that gets paid. Somebody pays $50. 20 of it's the time payment fee. If there's any restitution on a case, something that's owed a victim, 100% goes to that after the $20 time payment fee.
Did you just say there's a $20 fee if you pay on
if you're on a
time?
payment.
Every time you pay is a $20 fee?
So, no, it's a one-time fee.
Okay, just saying.
At 5 o'clock, excuse me, Supervisor McClure, at 5 o'clock, if they haven't paid it, that $20 is going to get applied to it, because then it's saying, hey, you need to have a payment contract on this case. So if it was $300, it'll be $320 the next day, right, because that $20 is going to apply on that case.
So then and over a period of how long do they have to pay that then?
So in my court, the minimum payment is $50, right? So it's a $50 minimum payment. Of course, you're going to evaluate what the fine is and the time period that they're on unsupervised probation. So if they're on unsupervised probation for 12 months, I should have a payment contract that resolves prior to that.
So I guess my question is, you have a payment contract, $300 $300 over the year, so it's $15 a month or whatever that is. Something, no, it's more than that, whatever it is. Anyway, the point being, are you charging a late fee if they don't pay it on time every time? So if it's a monthly, you have a monthly payment of X, and you don't pay it in that 30 or 31 days, and you're a day over, it's an additional late fee every time?
No.
Okay, just a one time.
Well, it's a process, right? So if somebody defaults on a payment contract, it'll go into a queue within our system to say, hey, take a look at this case, right? And so we're going to look at it, and there are 30 days past due or 60 days past due. The individual court, can set up a time period to default them, right? Saying that, hey, you haven't paid, and it's been 30 days. We've given you a chance to try to make that payment before it defaulted. You've defaulted now, and it goes to what's called FAIR. It stands for Fines and Restitution Enforcement. It's throughout the state of Arizona for all courts. They start a process to send you basically collections, billing. Hey, you owe this amount. You have to pay it in full. If they don't pay it in full, and there's a $45 fee that's attached to going into FAIR. If they don't pay it in full after the second notice to them, they tack on 19.5% interest on the total balance, and they place a hold on their vehicle registration. And so those things can happen. I make sure I always advise people when they're on a payment contract of that they either make sure they follow through with the payment arrangements that they've set with the court or communicating with us prior to the default.
Okay.
Separately, in terms of collections, right? So when that triggers to go into the queue, says, hey, you need to take a look at this case, we set them for what's called an order to show cause hearing. And so I do those every Monday in the afternoon. And it's to say, hey, you're behind $100 on your, total amount is $1,000, you're behind $100, to bring them in to say, what's going on? How come you're not making these payments? And some have a good reason, right? They lost their job, they're had some illness or something, right? You're not going to hold them in contempt. You're going to give them an opportunity to get back on track with it. Some people need mitigation of the fines, right? So that you take their circumstances into consideration. Maybe they're doing community service, right, in lieu of those fines. So you can't, not everybody is going to be able to pay those fines, and we certainly understand that. There's alternatives for it. Now, there may be millions of dollars that are outstanding. It's a tough thing to kind of get because some of these are on civil traffic. There's nothing for us to do. They default. It's just money on there. And so if they haven't paid their fines $1,200, they haven't paid it, that $1,200 is going to stay on the books. We don't have an ability to call them into the court. The only thing that's going to cause them to pay that is the registration hold. Right? They want to register their car. It doesn't suspend their registration. They can't just renew it when it comes time for that to renew.
Or if they tried to sell it?
I don't think there's a prohibition against them selling the car. That other person can certainly purchase it.
Well, I didn't know if we stick a lien on it.
Yeah. So
I'm just thinking outside the box. No. But anyway, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry I digress.
No, that's all right. The money, that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
And,
right.
I had a practice started up in Apache Junction. We had hundreds of cases that were on warrant status, no collection of any of those funds. I reviewed each and every one of those. They were already adjudicated, turned them into criminal restitution liens. So we did file liens with the Secretary of State's County Recorder's Office. If they had any real assets, it would attach to it. Mm-hmm. Brought in tens of thousands of additional dollars because it triggered some other things, some that weren't in collections and FAIR, some at the time you could suspend the driver's license on traffic violations. That brought people in, they owed $1,200, they paid the $1,200. So, and we released the lien at that point. So there are some things that we do in terms of the collection part, are able to give them an opportunity to come in and explain why they haven't been making their payments. as well on the criminal traffic offenses.
Judge Breber, just a quick question.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you tie it to the tags, you don't tie it to the VIN and the tags. So like Chairman Miller said, if they sell the car, if it's tied to the tags, sometimes the tags go with the car, but if they don't, is it tied to the VIN also? Where then that car can't get registered again?
Yeah, so if I'm driving Supervisor's McClure car and I have some issue, right, it's going to be attached to me, right, that I don't pay that. My name and information is all going to be on that citation. That's what gets entered into the AJAX in terms of my information if I'm not paying that. Now, I may have a car that's in collections, the registration hold, me and my wife own it. We're not going to be able to register that unless we pay that in full. Or get a release from the court, which I don't typically do until they pay that.
In some cases, that restricts people from being able to go to work, to be able to make the money, to then pay the fine.
It certainly does, which is why we tell them, talk to us before it defaults and goes through that process. So we can go to the next. Well, that was the last one for that. If you had any other questions about that or concerns about the dollar amount or the issues with that, I'd certainly love to hear them. I know we're going to go publish it and then come back for
Put it on an agenda in the future.
on an agenda for a public.
But it does
meeting.
require a public hearing
Yes.
component?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
Chairman, I just had one question.
yeah.
To the fees, was this still putting us in the red, even with raising the fees? And if so, do you happen to know a number? Is it putting us hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, so I can't project. There's a whole host of things that could change the number, right? Say down the road, Santan Valley incorporates the money that's currently coming out of the Pioneer Justice Court. Not that they incorporate, but they incorporate and they have a court of their own. Those will not come to the county any longer on any new citations, right?
At some point, they'll have their own magistrate.
Correct. And if they decide to set up some sort of cost recovery or security fee, that's where those would go. So it wouldn't come to the county any longer. But they're issuing lots of citations or not issuing lots of citations, right? The ebb and flow of that. But the $900,000 is just based off of last year, right? This is what was collected into that account. So if you're tripling it, it'll be $900,000.
Okay, I don't want the burden to be on the taxpayer is what I'm getting at.
So the difference currently, last year, $1.8 million. This $900,000 is only going to cut that in half for it.
So we are putting the burden still on the taxpayer, who don't run into fines.
Well, you know, if a fine is a deterrent, there'll be less traffic citations.
That's why I
then
said-
there'll be less revenue.
Well, I was
But
saying,
I guess
raise the
less
fees.
need for
Okay.
the facilities. But anyway, all right. Well, but it doesn't appear that fines really have changed anybody's behavior.
There's more and more people that are moving into the county, as you know, and
I get it.
Traffic enforcement, especially in the Santan Valley area. We've had several fatalities, several that resulted in serious injury. I know that they're hitting that area pretty hard just to curb the behavior.
Yeah.
Right? And enforcement is one piece that can go to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So now we'll go back to 5.
You know, 5 is the current cost recovery ordinance. This proposal here would repeal and replace it. Currently, there's the original cost recovery ordinance that was, if you can hit that, established in 1998, and then it was revised in 2006. So there's actually two documents that we have to look at in order to, this one just references the change in the first one. If we were to do that again, we'd have three documents, right, that we'd have to be looking at to determine, what to do with this recovery fee. So it would completely replace it. The collected fees would be used to modernize, streamline, automate, and operate the justice courts. Now, I highlight that because that is one of the changes that's within the current cost recovery to this. It removes secure, right? Because if there's a security fee, enhancement fee, there's no reason to have this to pay for security any longer. We have an established account if the board decided to move forward with that other ordinance that I just went over. So the operate provision would allow us to do some things. For instance, I'm short-staffed, and I'm going to be going through a process to seek 2 additional staff at a cost of $50,000. Instead of taking that from the general fund, I would use current general fund monies, move them from operational to personnel, and then use this special revenue source to pay for paper, ink, and other things if the board were to give us the ability to do that. So instead of seeking $100,000 for 2 positions, maybe it's $50,000 because I'm going to use this special revenue account and not have that added burden on the taxpayers. It's, again, assessed on the same case types. Individuals who are found or plead guilty or responsible to criminal offenses or civil traffic offenses. Same process, right? We just went over this with the previous one, so it's kind of repetitive with it because we're talking about the same thing. But it would be used to modernize, automate core systems, core operations, streamline operations. So if we say we're doing some things to get scanners and whatnot to try to upload everything into Ajax to get away from paper, not have a paper file any longer, which their AOC is doing on civil cases currently within the justice courts. They hadn't done that until this year. So all those things have to be purchased. We can use this fund rather than coming to the board and saying, hey, we need these additional funds because the state's moving forward with automation on all case types. So to give us an ability to do those things. Same process, expending money out of there goes through application to the Superior Court presiding judge and then to the county manager to sign off on it. Say, yeah, this is what this fund is supposed to be used for, and push that forward. It's managed by the finance department here in Pinal County. So it'd be, there's the $20 fee, unchanged, and then the non-sufficient fund fee. I think it was $25 previously. This $33 just matches the civil on the, where the state moved the civil fees up. The non-sufficient fund fee, they moved to $33, so this is just keeping it in balance with that. The other area where this ordinance would change is the board assisted and approved us having a justice court administration, right, office and 2 personnel within there. The account gains revenues in terms of from interest, right? And so instead of coming to the board, because I think our operating expense out of that office is like $12,000, and so this would give an opportunity instead of the interest that gets deposited in one court's account, right, that it would go into the justice court admin account and create a new cost center just for the justice court admin. Same process has to go through to expend any of the money, go through the presiding judge of the Superior Court and then on to the county manager before it would be expended. But there wouldn't be an ask to, hey, we need $50,000 for this office furniture and to, get a new copy machine for the administrative office. There'd be an ability for the Justice Court admin to seek that through the approval process.
So Mr. Chair, quick question. So Basically, you're adding another fee on at the other side to move this through. So what is your, you say you wouldn't have to ask us for more money, but if you've got people that aren't paying their fees already and you're adding another fee that people may not be able to pay, you're still going to be in the red. So how do you propose to pay for these things if the cost recovery for these fees is in the red? You're still going to have to ask for money because it doesn't, unless you're printing it on those scanners and printers that you're talking about.
So the numbers I'm using are real dollars, right? Those are monies we've already collected.
You already got
had a process for it. So it's not an imaginary, hey, I hope to get this. It's been something that we've already seen and are on the books. Typically, like, for instance, my court, we're fairly new. It's this is our 7th year in operation. If you looked at our revenues 3 years ago, right, it probably would have been $300,000 less than currently. But the compounding of the payments, right, people are making $50 payments, right, from year 1 to year 2, maybe they're making them in year 3 still, right? Those are getting added. Those are the revenues. So you'll see a steady increase. Of course, we had an increase in terms of case filings each year, but not to equate to that difference. It's just the payments are compounding year over year. We give people an opportunity to make payments, Supervisor, and we're not a debtors. We don't have a debtors prison. We don't put people in jail because they're not paying. The provisions in terms of the registration, that's not my decision. When it goes into collections, that's something that's been established through the legislature and the Supreme Court. So it's not something that I've said, yeah, let's suspend everybody's registration for that. And people, we do have an ability to pull them out of FAIR, but they have to be willing and wanting to, one, do that and approach the court with it and then agree to some things, whether it's payments or community service or something that will pull them out of that.
Out of curiosity, what is the community service offset? Is it still $10 an hour or something like that?
No. So for the most part, for me, we're all individual courts, Supervisor. Sorry. We're all individual courts, and each justice of the peace gets to set in terms of what they want to do with that. For the most part, I do $20 an hour.
$20 an hour? Okay. I just remember it was 10 a few years ago, so I was just curious. Okay.
As the minimum wage has increased here in Arizona, right, you needed to kind of
at least
stay steady with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And this just talks about some of the things that we're facing and will have expenses for in the future. And any other questions?
Same thing, you'll publish and
Come back for
put it on an agenda in the future.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions or comments?
All right, Chairman, thank you very much. Supervisors, thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you, Judge.
Hey, Judge. And I think we're done. Meeting adjourned.